Hello and good evening, jolly tea drinkers. Welcome back to Bedtime Tea. One more steep before sleep. Grab your teacup, get cozy, and enjoy this relaxing bedtime story that will help you feel calm and ready to drift off into a nice, peaceful sleep. Ready to begin? Tonight's story is The Curious Case of the Beachside Brew. It was a tremendous Thursday in the town of Wellington, a very busy day at the tea cafe, and Miss T and Paulina were doing their best to keep up with the customers. Alina Messina, owner of the tea cafe, better known as Miss T, walked to the counter with a notepad page full of her latest customer order information. She took a moment to lean on the counter, just as her co-worker and friend, Paulina, walked over and did the same thing. Paulina took one look at Miss T and said, "You too?" "Yes," replied Miss T exhaustedly. "It's like everyone in town wanted tea at the exact same time." Paulina replied, "I know. Well, at least it's good for business, right? And their visits mean that they love this place." "True," said Miss T. "I just wish they could have spread out their timing on those visits," she mused. Paulina straightened up and brightly said, "Hey, you know what we need?" "To hire more workers," Miss T said as she walked behind the counter to work on the orders. "No, well, yes, but that's not what I was about to say," Paulina replied quickly. "We need a day off." Miss T paused and looked at her. "We sure do," she said as she continued working. Paulina replied, "You know that tomorrow is a holiday, right?" as she ripped a sheet of paper from her notepad and handed it to Miss T. Miss T asked, "Is it? What holiday?" as she took the paper from her to read the order. Paulina sat down at the stool and said, "Does it matter? It's just some dumb made-up holiday that companies use to make people buy stuff. What really matters is that we," she said, motioning between her and Miss T, "have a day off from work." "Oh," said Miss T in wonder. "We should do a day trip, a road trip, a day road trip," said Paulina with excitement as she jumped up off her stool. "Ooh," replied Miss T brightly. "Wait, but neither one of us owns a car." "Yeah," said Paulina. "I knew I missed something," she said dejectedly, looking around at the busy cafe, just as the front door chimed. "Unless—" "Wow, the afternoon rush is enormous today," said Sean Hansen, also known as Mr. Coffee, after he strolled up to the ladies at the counter. "Mr. Coffee, we have absolutely no idea what you're referring to," said Miss T sarcastically. "Oh, sorry. I know you're probably feeling the pressure. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to help," he offered. Paulina looked at him with a glint in her eye. "So glad that you offered, because there is something that you could help us with." "Paulina, no, leave him alone, please," said Miss T. "What? But he offered to help us," said Paulina playfully. "Oh, you know that's not what he meant," Miss T chuckled. "Hey, the man said anything," said Paulina belligerently. "Paulina," Miss T laughed. "Okay, ladies, just tell me what you need," interrupted Mr. Coffee. Paulina glanced at Miss T, who shook her head and mouthed, "No." Then Paulina turned back to Mr. Coffee and said, "How do you feel about taking a little road trip with us tomorrow?" "Paulina," exhaled Miss T frustratedly. "A road trip?" Mr. Coffee asked. "Are you inviting me on a road trip?" he asked, looking at Miss T. "It wasn't my idea," said Miss T defensively. "Ouch," said Mr. Coffee. "Way to hurt a man's ego," he remarked playfully. "Oh, no, that's not what I meant, Sean," said Miss T. "I was simply trying to protect you from being caught up in one of Paulina's wild and crazy ideas." "It's not wild and a crazy idea. It's a simple road trip." "Do you want to come with us?" Paulina asked hopefully. Sounds like fun. When do we leave?" Mr. Coffee replied. "Yay!" said Paulina. "Coffee's on the house for you today, sir." "You don't even serve coffee here," he responded. Paulina deadpanned. "I really don't see what the problem is." Mr. Coffee laughed. "You agreed to go on a road trip with us just like that?" Miss T asked. "You didn't even ask where we were going." "Okay, where are we going?" Mr. Coffee asked playfully. "To a cool cafe by the beach," replied Paulina. "You had me at cafe and you sealed the deal with beach," said Mr. Coffee as he leaned on the counter. Miss T laughed. Paulina responded, "Who knew it was this easy to get you to take us on a road trip? We could have done this a long time ago." Mr. Coffee chuckled. "All right, so what time do we leave?" "How about 10 a.m.?" said Paulina. "Does that work for you, Miss T?" "Yes. Oh, I can make us some sandwiches and snacks for our trip," said Miss T brightly. Paulina replied, "Come on, you are not working on your day off. Plus, why would you need to make food? We're driving to a cafe." "Right," Miss T chuckled. "I just wanted to do something helpful and nice. I mean, you are taking time out of your busy schedule to drive us." "It's no bother at all," said Mr. Coffee. "I too could use a day off, and I can't think of a better way to spend my day than with you, both of you, at a cool cafe on the beach." Mr. Coffee fumbled his words as he sat down on one of the stools at the counter. "Okay," said Paulina. "Well, there's only one thing left to say." Chuckled Miss T. "And what's that?" Paulina looked at both of them with a huge grin on her face and said, "Shotgun." The sun shined brightly in the crystal blue sky that morning as the trio rode in the car. "Oh, this day is gorgeous," exclaimed Paulina. "There's not a cloud in the sky," responded Miss T dreamily. "And I think it bears repeating that we can actually see the full sky right now because we are riding inside of Mr. Coffee's fancy convertible. Woo-wee!" Mr. Coffee chuckled in the driver's seat. Miss T giggled from the back seat and said, "Oh my goodness, Paulina, leave him alone." "I'm just saying, who knew he owned a fancy convertible? I mean, what exactly do you do for work? Are you Batman?" asked Paulina. "Oh, look, the GPS says we're almost there," said Mr. Coffee playfully. "Your destination is on the right," said the GPS. "Ooh, Miss T, you see how he's trying to avoid the question? I will get to the bottom of this mystery," said Paulina playfully. "You have arrived," said the GPS. "Oh, look, we have arrived," said Mr. Coffee with a chuckle as he parked the car. "How convenient," said Paulina. Miss T giggled. Paulina jumped out of the car first and pushed the seat forward so that Miss T could exit the car. Wow, look at this place, remarked Miss T. Absolutely beautiful, said Paulina. Mr. Coffee secured the car and joined the ladies on the other side. I've got to hand it to you, ladies. You chose a nice destination for a road trip, said Mr. Coffee. This is all Paulina. I had no idea this cafe even existed before she told me about it, said Miss T. Well done, Paulina. Okay, so where's the cafe? Asked Mr. Coffee as he clapped his hands and rubbed them together. Paulina looked around and said, over there. Let's go. They walked towards the cafe. On their way, they passed a small pop-up shop. They stopped to take a look at the items. Hey, look at this. This is my kind of shirt, said Paulina, who held up a shirt that said, I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. Miss T giggled. Oh, that's a good one. Check this out, said Mr. Coffee as he held up a motorized, dancing toy dog who was wearing a shirt that said, Why be moody when you can shake your booty? Oh, I love it, said Miss T. Paulina wandered over to another display area. Look, they have jewelry, she said. Mr. Coffee and Miss T walked over to look at the jewelry too. This one is cute, said Paulina as she held up a ring. They do have some interesting pieces, said Mr. Coffee. Oh, Batman likes jewelry. That's a surprise, said Paulina jokingly. Mr. Coffee and Miss T chuckled. I think I might get this one, said Miss T. Paulina and Mr. Coffee came closer to get a better look. Oh, I like that. It suits you. You should get it, said Paulina. Miss T inspected the tag and said, I don't like that price, though. She showed the price to Paulina, who grimaced, and Miss T put the ring back down on the counter. Paulina went to the register with her shirt while Miss T continued to look around. Mr. Coffee walked over to her. She held up a shirt and asked him, Think I can get away with wearing this shirt? The front of the shirt said, I'm on a whiskey diet. I've lost 3 days already. Mr. Coffee shook his head and chuckled. No, I'm afraid not. Miss T smiled, put the shirt back on the counter and said, I didn't think so. So, are you having fun? She asked as she turned to face him. Yes, said Mr. Coffee. I haven't taken a day off in a while. This was very much needed, he said as he looked at the shirts on the counter. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, said Miss T. So, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for work? Mr. Coffee looked at her, smiled, and opened his mouth to respond, just as Paulina bounced over and interrupted them. Guys, they gave me an extra 15% off when I signed up for their email list, said Paulina. You know that means they're probably going to send you 100 emails every week, right? Is that 15% worth it? Asked Mr. Coffee playfully. That's what the spam folder is for, replied Paulina. She makes a good point, said Miss T. Okay, you guys ready to go? I'm hungry. Let's get to the cafe, said Paulina. You can come back and buy stuff after we eat. Sorry, I'm just really hungry, she explained. No worries at all, Miss T chuckled. Are you ready? She asked Mr. Coffee. Yes, let's go, said Mr. Coffee. They entered the cafe and joined the line to place their orders. This is cute. Not as cute as our cafe, but cute, said Paulina with a lowered voice. It's nice, said Miss T as she looked around. What do you think? She asked Mr. Coffee. It has a quaint feel about it, said Mr. Coffee. But you know what the real question is. What's that? Asked Miss T. What's their coffee taste like? He replied. Miss T and Paulina laughed. You would ask that question, said Paulina. Hey, it's a legitimate concern at any cafe as far as I'm concerned, said Mr. Coffee. A woman in the line ahead of them dropped 2 books on the ground, and Miss T reached down to help her pick one up. So then why do you come to the tea cafe so much? We don't exactly sell coffee, asked Paulina inquisitively. Well, perhaps I enjoy the atmosphere, replied Mr. Coffee as he glanced at Miss T, who just stood up and handed the book back to the grateful woman in line. I'm on to you, Batman, replied Paulina. Mr. Coffee gave her a confused look. So, do you guys know what you're gonna get? I heard they make exclusive tea blends and I can't wait to try one, said Miss T. Yes, I'm going to get the red pepper hummus on multigrain with avocado and feta cheese, and I'm going to have the exclusive green oolong iced tea, said Paulina. Miss T then said, I think I'm going to go with the tuna salad in a whole wheat wrap with tomato, lettuce, and honey mustard, and their exclusive white peony iced tea. Ooh, those sound good. And what will you have, Mr. Coffee? The chicken or the turkey? She said, as she looked him in the eye as if daring him to do something. Well, I haven't decided yet. I'm still looking at the menu and thinking about it, he said with confusion. Oh, look at all the coffee options that they have, said Miss T with excitement. Iced mocha, cafe au lait. Ooh, you can even get an extra shot of espresso. I see, he said with a chuckle. Let's see if their cappuccino is any good. Ooh, they have boba tea. I'm definitely getting one of those to go, exclaimed Paulina. As long as you finish it before you get into my car, said Mr. Coffee jokingly. Not to worry, I usually finish boba tea about 5 minutes after the cup gets into my hands, said Paulina with a chuckle. After they placed their orders, they sat at an open booth near the window. Paulina sat next to Miss T and Mr. Coffee sat across from them. I wonder if it would be a good idea to switch our cafe over to this type of system, pondered Miss T out loud. You know, have people place their orders and pick up their food at the counter. It might be easier since we have a smaller staff. Sounds like a winning idea to me, said Paulina. Oh, but I think one of the things that makes your cafe so great is the way that you personally interact with your customers at their tables. You're so good-natured and caring with your customers. It's truly a huge selling point at the tea cafe, said Mr. Coffee. Well, thank you, Mr. Coffee. I appreciate that, said Miss T joyfully. Order number 27, said the woman at the counter. Miss T looked at her receipt and said, Oh, yay, that's me. Be right back. And she got up and walked to the counter for her food. Paulina gave Mr. Coffee a look. Mr. Coffee looked back at her in confusion and said, What? Nothing, she said. Then why are you giving me that look? Asked Mr. Coffee. Order number 28, said the woman at the counter. Paulina looked at her receipt and said, That's me. Be right back. She got up and walked to the counter for her food. Mr. Coffee shook his head, pulled out his cell phone, and looked through it. Miss T arrived at the table with her food and sat down. Oh, come on, no work today, remember? It's your day off, she said playfully. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Emails won't check themselves, you know, Mr. Coffee said jokingly as he put his phone back into his pocket. Order number 29, said the woman at the counter. That's me, he said as he stood up. Paulina arrived as he was about to leave the table and said, You guys won't believe what I just overheard, as she sat down in the booth opposite Miss T. Mr. Coffee stopped in his tracks and said, What did you hear? "What's going on?" asked Miss T. "Did you get your drink?" asked Paulina. "No, they said something happened in the kitchen and that they are substituting a smoothie instead. I'm waiting for them to create mine," said Miss T. "That's what they told me too," said Paulina. "But as I was grabbing my napkins and utensils, I overheard one of the workers talking to the shop owner." Paulina lowered her voice and said, "Apparently, the recipes for the exclusive teas are missing." "What?" said Miss T. "Yes," said Paulina. "What do you mean they're missing?" asked Mr. Coffee. "Order number 29, repeated the woman at the counter. Paulina lowered her voice and said, "It seems that maybe someone stole the recipes?" Miss T gasped. "Oh, the recipes were stolen?" Paulina nodded her head. Mr. Coffee said to Paulina, "Okay, tell us exactly what you heard." "Order number 29, said the woman impatiently at the counter. "Wait, tell us what you heard in 2 minutes after I get my food," Mr. Coffee said, rushing off. "That man is bossy," said Paulina jokingly. "So which one is the owner?" asked Miss T, looking around the counter area. "Oh, that woman over there with the red apron," Paulina said as she nodded her head in that direction. She was frantic, and she said to the other woman, "They're gone, they're all gone." Paulina continued in her lowered voice. "Oh my gosh, I would lose it if someone stole my tea blend notebook," said Miss T. The other woman was trying to calm her down. "It was too much to watch, so I had to walk away," said Paulina. Mr. Coffee arrived with his food and sat down next to Miss T in the booth. "All right, let's hear it." "Wait, did you start without me, Paulina?" he asked. Paulina shrugged her shoulders, opened her bag of potato chips, and placed one in her mouth. "Such wrongness," replied Mr. Coffee. Miss T chuckled and said, "We only talked about how upset the cafe owner was. You didn't miss any pertinent information. I'm sure that Paulina has more to share." "Nope, that was basically it," said Paulina as she took a bite of her sandwich and smiled at Mr. Coffee jokingly. "I just wish there was something we could do to help," said Miss T. "Well, we actually could, Detective," said Mr. Coffee as he looked at her with a smile. Miss T looked up from her sandwich and asked, "You think we should try to solve this?" "We can try our best. We do make a great team," said Mr. Coffee. "Uh-huh. What are you guys talking about?" asked Paulina. "Mr. Coffee and I have done a little bit of detective work here and there," said Miss T humbly as she used her fingers to make quotation marks. "A little bit? We've solved 3 whole cases," said Mr. Coffee playfully. "Ooh, so you two are crime-solving partners? How did I miss that?" asked Paulina with great interest. "It's not that big a deal, Paulina," said Miss T. "Oh, so now you're insulting me in our partnership?" Mr. Coffee asked playfully. "I don't know if I can even finish my sandwich now." "Oh, really? And what kind of sandwich is that, by the way? Chicken?" asked Paulina. Mr. Coffee gave Paulina a look and then turned back to face Miss T, who said, "But this seems like it may be out of our league," as she looked sadly at the cafe owner, who was on the verge of tears. Mr. Coffee looked at the cafe owner and then back at Miss T and said, "But look at her. As a fellow tea shop owner, I know you feel for her. I can see it all over your face. Don't you want to at least offer our help to her? It can't hurt." "She could tell you to get lost," said Paulina. "And if she does, then we will walk away. Deal?" Mr. Coffee said to Miss T. "Deal. But can we finish our food first?" said Miss T. Mr. Coffee and Paulina nodded and quickly ate their food. "Oh my goodness, I just don't know what I'm going to do, said Dawn, the cafe owner, hysterically as she held onto Mr. Coffee. That recipe book is what I use to make the specialties that we are known for. If we don't have those recipes, then we don't have the teas. And if we don't have the teas, then we don't have a cafe, she cried as she buried her face in his shirt. Everything happened quickly after they ate. They introduced themselves to Dawn, the cafe owner, and offered their assistance to her. She immediately agreed and then burst into tears, grateful for the help. She told them all that transpired that day and then latched on to Mr. Coffee for emotional support. Dawn, we are going to do our best to help you as much as we can, said Mr. Coffee wearily. I bet there's going to be snot all over her shirt when she's finished, Paulina said to Miss T, out of earshot of the others. Miss T held back her chuckle. Okay, Dawn, said Mr. Coffee, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked my friend who once experienced some disappearing tea at her own cafe. Okay, what's that? Asked Dawn, sniffling. Mr. Coffee held Dawn away from him so that he could see her face and said, Do you have any security cameras? He then glanced at Miss T with a small smile. Yes, I do, said Dawn. Oh my gosh, the criminal could be caught on tape. Let's go look at the footage, she said as she rushed off to the back office. Mr. Coffee, Miss T, and Paulina quickly followed after her. Oh, this is all my fault, said Dawn, who threw herself back at Mr. Coffee for emotional support. After combing through the security footage, they discovered that Dawn placed the recipe book on top of some boxes that were being sent out for delivery. The delivery guy picked up all of the boxes and the book. If I hadn't been so busy, I would have paid better attention to where I placed that book, she cried as she shoved her face back into Mr. Coffee's shirt. Snot, 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 said Paulina to Miss T. Miss T replied, Dawn, try not to be so hard on yourself. I know how busy things can get in the kitchen. It's an understandable mistake. Plus, said Mr. Coffee, there's good news. There was no crime committed here. Yeah, said Paulina. All we need to do is call the driver and ask him to bring the book back. Easy peasy. Do you have his number? Miss T asked. Let me check, said Dawn as she let go of Mr. Coffee and looked through the paperwork on her desk. Okay, I don't have his number, but I have the number for the delivery company, Dawn said as she held out the piece of paper. Great, give them a call and see if they will reach him for you, said Mr. Coffee. Okay, said Dawn, who picked up the phone and dialed. It's ringing. Yes, hello. I placed an order today for one of your drivers to make a delivery for my cafe. Yes, that's right, the Beachside Cafe. Well, see, there was a mix-up and your driver accidentally picked up a book along with the packages and I'm just trying to get it back. Okay. No, it wouldn't have an address on it because it was not intended for delivery. Can you call and ask him to bring it back to the cafe, please? Oh, but this is important. Oh, okay, I will call back later. Thank you. She hung up the phone and said, For nothing? What did they say? Asked Mr. Coffee. They said they're too busy and that this isn't important enough to call a driver while on the job, so they told me to call back later. She sobbed and threw herself back into Mr. Coffee's arms as he stared at Miss T and Paulina helplessly. Snot, 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 remarked Paulina. Miss T chuckled. Okay, there, all hope is not lost, said Mr. Coffee. That's right, said Miss T, because it's time for Plan B. What's Plan B? Asked Paulina. We take the delivery list, said Miss T, and go to each location to see if we can track down the driver. Brilliant, said Mr. Coffee. Paulina picked up the list on the desk and said, 7 deliveries? That's going to wreck our entire relaxing beach day. Paulina, you make a good point, said Mr. Coffee. No one asked you to join this detective team, so please feel free to hang out here and keep Dawn company while Miss T and I search for the driver. What? And miss out on all the fun? No way, Jose, said Paulina. Plus, Batman never goes anywhere without Robin. Mr. Coffee replied, And who said that you were Robin? More like the Riddler to me. Plus, if you're Robin, what does that make me? Asked Miss T playfully. You are too smart for this mess, said Mr. Coffee. Excuse me, Dawn interrupted. Will you guys please stop fooling around and go find my recipe book? My entire life depends on it, Dawn sobbed. Okay, I've got the list. Let's go, said Paulina, so dramatic. Paulina, you're not helping, sang Mr. Coffee as he tried to extract himself from Dawn's arms. Sorry, but you're gonna have to let him go so that he can help us find your book, said Paulina to Dawn. Oh, okay, said Dawn as she looked up at Mr. Coffee. Thank you for letting me lean on your shoulder. Mr. Coffee looked at his shirt, which was so wet that it was sticking to his skin. Uneasily, he said, glad I could help, as he quickly left the office. So, we'll be in touch, said Miss T as she and Paulina followed him. Once they started walking outside, Paulina and Miss T began speaking a mile a minute. 7 deliveries, said Paulina. There's no way we're gonna catch this guy. Mr. Coffee took his phone, keys, and wallet, and turned to Miss T and said, Would you hold these, please? She opened her hands and took the items from him absent-mindedly and kept speaking. Well, we've at least got to try. If I lost my tea blend recipe book, I would do all that I could to find it. Suddenly, Mr. Coffee started running. The ladies stopped talking and watched him in surprise. What in the world? Said Paulina. Where is he going? Said Miss T. Mr. Coffee, where are you going? Yelled Paulina. Sean? Yelled Miss T as she started to run after him while trying not to drop his belongings. Miss T, what's going on? Paulina yelled as she ran after them. Mr. Coffee took off his shirt, kicked off his shoes, ran to the water, and dived in. Miss T and Paulina stopped at the edge of the water and watched him in a panic. Sean! Yelled Miss T with concern. Wow, does he know how to swim? Asked Paulina out of breath. Oh, I have no idea. I definitely don't. Do you? Asked Miss T. Nope. Should we call 911? Asked Paulina. I don't know. Where are the lifeguards? Asked Miss T as she looked around in alarm. I don't know, replied Paulina. What do we do? Okay, let me think. Oh, what? Her voice trailed off as Mr. Coffee finally emerged from the water and walked towards them, shirtless. Holy six-pack, Batman, said Paulina in awe. Miss T stared for a moment and then shook her head and said, Sean, are you all right? What happened? I'm sorry, I could not stand one more minute in that nasty shirt. Ugh, said Mr. Coffee as he looked at the discarded shirt on the sand with disdain. See, I knew it. Snot all over that man shirt, said Paulina. But are you okay? Asked Miss T. Yes, said Mr. Coffee. You're really all right? Asked Miss T. Yes, I'm totally fine, said Mr. Coffee. Good, because here's your stuff, she yelled as she threw each item at him angrily. Ow! Ow! Alina! That hurt! Ow! Said Mr. Coffee, trying to dodge the painful hits but failing. Good, because you scared me, Sean, Miss T yelled. We didn't know what was going on, said Paulina. I'm sorry, Alina. It was a state of insanity. I couldn't help myself. I just knew that I needed to get that nastiness off of me, like now, said Mr. Coffee as he bent down to pick up his belongings. Then say something. Don't just go run off and jump into the ocean, Miss T said angrily as she marched away. See, now you did it, said Paulina. You and your beautiful body just ruined beach day. Way to go, Batman, she said as she followed after Miss T. Guys, wait, said Mr. Coffee as he ran and caught up to them and blocked Miss T's path. Alina, I'm so very sorry. I didn't think, and I'm so sorry that I scared you. Would you please forgive me, he asked. With her arms crossed and her eyes looking at the ocean, Miss T said, I'm not talking to you until you put on a shirt, and she walked past him. Where am I supposed to get a shirt? He said to her back. Paulina walked up to Mr. Coffee and said, Personally, this, she pointed to his body, is not a problem for me, but it sounds like you're going to need a shirt if you hope to work with your partner to solve this case today. Okay, but it's not like I made my shirt disgusting on purpose, he said loudly so that Miss T would hear him. Look, Batman, I would suggest that you make your way back to that little pop-up shop that we visited earlier and get yourself something to wear, if you hope to salvage the rest of this day, okay? Said Paulina, who then walked quickly to catch up to Miss T. Mr. Coffee watched the ladies walk away and then turned and headed for the shop. All right, have you calmed down yet? Asked Paulina, out of breath. You walk really fast, by the way. What? Asked Miss T. Oh, you made it halfway down the beach when you stormed off. It's like anger gives you speed, teased Paulina. Miss T stopped walking and gave her a look. Look, I was just as scared as you were, Paulina continued. But you've got to get over this so that you guys can get that recipe book back for Dawn. Tea Cafe Owners United and all that. Remember? Yeah, all right, said Miss T. I wasn't so much angry as I was scared. But you're right. I need to calm down and let it go. Okay, where's the list? Yes, said Paulina as she gave Miss T the list. Miss T glanced back over her shoulder and then turned all the way around and said, Now where did he go? Oh, I told him to go get a shirt, said Paulina. He'll find us, don't worry. Let's get back to the list, because time is ticking away here. And if we solve this case, we might be able to salvage some of our relaxing beach day. Miss T studied the list and said, Okay, 7 deliveries. She looked at her watch and said, Well, we can immediately cross off these 4 because the delivery time has already passed. Okay, that sounds good, said Paulina. What's the next one? This business here, said Miss T. Ooh, I can GPS the location on my phone, said Paulina as she typed in the address. Okay, it looks like it's just a 5-minute walk from here. Great, let's go, said Miss T. The ladies started walking further down the beach boardwalk. They were looking at the GPS on the phone when suddenly they heard shouting. Confused, they looked up and around, only to see a runaway ice cream cart coming straight at them at a high speed. Like a deer caught in headlights, they both froze, unable to move, when instantaneously Mr. Coffee appeared, pushing them into the sand and out of the way of the rogue ice cream cart. "Alina, are you all right?" said Mr. Coffee, as he reached over to help her stand. "Oh, Sean?" she said in a daze, as she stood up and dusted the sand from her clothes. I think so, yes." "I'm okay too, by the way," said Paulina as she stood up. "Sorry, I saw that cart headed your way, but you didn't move, so I tried to help," said Mr. Coffee. "Thank you," said Miss T, as they stared at each other for a moment. Breaking the moment, a man suddenly appeared and said, "Whoa, is everyone all right? The brakes gave out on my ice cream cart. Was anybody hurt?" "We're okay," said Paulina. "Our friend here was able to push us out of the way to safety." "That cart was flying pretty fast, sir," said Mr. Coffee intensely. "I'm so sorry about that. The brake pedal must be broken," said the man. "I'm Mike, by the way. I own Mike's Bikes on the boardwalk," he said as he extended his hand to shake Mr. Coffee's hand. "I was helping a customer when the cart started rolling away. I didn't even notice it until the customer said something, but then it picked up speed and I couldn't catch it. I'm just glad you were there to protect these ladies from harm." "Yep, he truly is a superhero. Like Batman, some might say," said Paulina with a playful smile. "Well, nice to meet you, Batman," said Mike. "I'm so happy to hear that's catching on," said Mr. Coffee sarcastically. "Actually, my name is Sean, and this is Alina and Paulina," he said as he pointed to each lady. "Nice to meet all of you," said Mike. "My apologies again for what happened. If you guys want to rent bikes today, it's completely on the house." "Thanks, Mike," said Mr. Coffee. "We're actually working on a project right now, but we appreciate your offer." "Wait, Mike," said Miss T, who finally got her bearings. "We might be able to use your help with something." "Sure, whatever you need," said Mike. "Mike's Bikes is on the list of deliveries from the Beachside Cafe today." "Oh yes, I place an order from them at least twice a week," said Mike. "I love their tea and pastries in the morning." "Great. Has the delivery arrived yet?" asked Paulina. "Yes, about 15 minutes ago," said Mike. "Oh man, we just missed him," said Miss T. "That's okay. Let's go to the next company on the list," said Paulina. "We were trying to catch the driver," said Miss T. "Thanks anyway, Mike." "No problem. And if you change your mind about the bikes, my shop is just down the boardwalk," said Mike. "Thanks, Mike," said Mr. Coffee as the two men shook hands again. Then Mr. Coffee turned to face Miss T and asked, "So, what are you thinking?" Miss T responded, "I'm thinking we need to get to these last two companies on this list quickly if we have any hope of catching this guy." Mr. Coffee looked over and saw that Mike and Paulina were chatting, so he pulled Miss T to the side and said, "Alina, I am really, really sorry about what I did earlier. I didn't mean to upset you," he said sincerely. Are we okay?" he asked. "Yes, of course we are," said Miss T. "I'm sorry that I got so angry and threw all of your stuff at you." "You've got quite an arm there," Mr. Coffee joked. "If this tea cafe doesn't work out for you, you might want to consider a job in Major League Baseball. Our home team could show you some good pitches." Miss T giggled and said, "Nice shirt, by the way. You're my bestie." "You like it?" said Mr. Coffee with a smile. "Yeah, it's cute," said Miss T. "All right, let's get back to solving this case," said Mr. Coffee. "What's the next place on the list?" "Yes," said Miss T. "It's Fred's Fish Shop." Paulina laughed. Miss T and Mr. Coffee looked over at her. She was deep in conversation with Mike. "Paulina looks like she's having a good time," said Mr. Coffee as they started walking. Miss T chuckled and said, "Paulina, we're on the move." Okay, it was so nice to meet you, Mike, said Paulina. Hey, if you change your mind about those bikes, you know where to find me, said Mike. As he walked away, he turned back to her briefly and said with a smile, and I do hope that you change your mind. Miss T and Mr. Coffee looked at each other and then looked at Paulina with a smile. All right, everyone, back to work, said Paulina playfully. What's our next destination? Fred's fish shop, chuckled Mr. Coffee. Great, let me pull up my GPS, said Paulina. Nice shirt, Mr. Coffee. And thanks for the save earlier. Thanks. And you're welcome, Paulina, said Mr. Coffee. Any chance I can finally get you to stop calling me Batman now? He asked. Now that you've actually saved my life? Never, said Paulina. Okay, I've got the directions. Let's walk this way. They reached Fred's fish shop, but missed the delivery driver by only 5 minutes. They quickly made their way to the final location on the list, Brenda's boats. They looked around, trying to find an employee. I see someone over there by the boats, said Mr. Coffee. You guys go, I'll be right there. I just gotta run to the bathroom first, said Paulina as she walked into the public restroom. Miss T and Mr. Coffee walked over to a woman who was hosing off one of the boats. Excuse me, miss, said Mr. Coffee, who apparently startled the woman because she turned around so quickly that she accidentally sprayed Mr. Coffee with her hose. Whoa, said Mr. Coffee. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, said the woman as she quickly turned off the water. She dropped the hose, grabbed a towel, and handed it to Mr. Coffee. It's okay, said Mr. Coffee as he took the towel and attempted to dry himself. Wet shirts seem to be my thing today, he joked. Miss T chuckled. Oh, I'm so sorry. It was like I zoned out there for a minute, 'cause that never happens, she said. I'm Brenda, by the way, and I'm the owner here. Hi, Brenda. I'm Alina Messina, and she glanced over at Mr. Coffee, who was currently dabbing the wet shirt that was clinging to his chest, and continued. And this is Sean Hanson, she said as she quickly looked to the side. Mr. Coffee chuckled. Oh, I am so glad I arrived in time to hear that, said Paulina jokingly. Miss T glared at her. Welcome, said Brenda. And again, I am so sorry for the water spray. How can I help you today? Did you want to rent a boat? Sorry, not today, Brenda, replied Mr. Coffee. We were actually looking for a delivery driver who was supposed to deliver something to you from the Beachside Cafe. Yes. Has he arrived yet? Asked Miss T. Oh, yes. He's actually sitting right over there on that bench, said Brenda, who pointed to a man on the boardwalk. Miss T, Mr. Coffee, and Paulina all turned around, saw the man, looked at each other, and then sprinted over to where the man was seated. When they reached him, they all started speaking to him at the same time. The delivery man was clearly overwhelmed. He looked at all three of them in confusion and said, what? Are you the delivery driver for the Beachside Cafe? Asked Mr. Coffee. We have been looking for you all day, said Paulina. Why? Who are you? Asked the delivery man. Miss T put her hand up to stop Mr. Coffee and Paulina and spoke calmly to the delivery man. Hello. We are friends of Dawn from the Beachside Cafe. She accidentally placed her recipe book on the packages that you took to deliver today. She desperately needs that book back. We tracked you down so that we could retrieve the book for her. The delivery man slowly nodded. Okay, I'm going to need you to confirm your identity before I give a package to you. Are you kidding? Asked Paulina impatiently. We've been up and down this beach looking for you. Why would we lie about that? Paulina, please calm down, said Mr. Coffee with a strained smile. Sir, if you would simply call your boss, I'm sure he would confirm our story. I'll do that, said the man as he stood up, pulled out his phone, and walked away from the group. I can't believe we have to go through all of this, said Paulina. That book isn't even a package. Shh, Paulina. If this is the only way we can get it back, we've got to do it, said Miss T with a lowered voice. But what if it doesn't work? Asked Paulina. Then I'm prepared to make a different phone call, said Mr. Coffee mysteriously. Ooh, that's that Batman influence, Paulina playfully said to Miss T. Mr. Coffee chuckled. The delivery driver returned to them, opened his bag, removed the recipe book, and gave it to Miss T. Here you go, he said, and walked away. Thanks, said Miss T with pleasant surprise. This is it, guys, this is it. We solved the case, said Mr. Coffee. Let's get this back to Dawn and enjoy the rest of our beach day, said Paulina. Later that evening, Mr. Coffee pulled up in front of Miss T's home. He got out of the car and opened the door for her to exit the vehicle. He had already given Paulina a ride home. Thank you so much for an unexpected and eventful day, he said. You're welcome. It was certainly unexpected, replied Miss T. But did you have fun? She asked. It was a bit crazy at times, but I would do it all again if it meant that I got the chance to spend a day with you, he said. Miss T smiled, looked down and filled her sweater. And then Mr. Coffee said, I could do without the snot all over my shirt, though. Yes, that was so disgusting, said Miss T. And when we gave the recipe book back to her, she tried to hug you again. Thank God for Paulina, who blocked her attempt, chuckled Mr. Coffee. She definitely made up for all her teasing with that move. Well, neither one of us wanted to see you jump into the ocean again, joked Miss T. Mr. Coffee chuckled. And they smiled at each other. So I guess I'll get going now, said Mr. Coffee. Oh, wait, one sec. He reached inside of his car, pulled out a bag, and gave it to her. I got this for you, he said shyly. Oh, wow, you bought me something? Questioned Miss T. It was just a little something that I saw at that t-shirt shop, said Mr. Coffee. No big deal. Thank you, that was very sweet of you, said Miss T, as she hugged the bag to her chest and walked to the door of her home. You're very welcome, said Mr. Coffee, as he slowly walked back to the car. Good night, Miss T. Good night, Mr. Coffee, she responded as she stood in her doorway, watched him get into his car and leave. Miss T watched his car drive out of sight. Then she opened the bag. Inside was a t-shirt that said, You're beautiful, and a small box. She slowly opened the box, only to discover the pretty ring that she admired at the store earlier that day. Oh my goodness, she whispered. She looked up at where Mr. Coffee's car was last seen, smiled sweetly, and then went inside her home and closed the door. And thus ends the curious case of the Beachside Brew. The end. I do hope that you enjoyed this story. Join us again next time for another tale from our Bedtime Tea collection. Sleep well, jolly tea drinkers, and may your cups overflow with joy and peace.